Hello, welcome to another episode of Test, Optimize, and Scale. Excited to have Jill Albert here with us today, founder of Direct Results. Here to speak about everything radio, audio related. It's a topic that we have not been able to dive into on the podcast yet, so have been looking forward to our discussions. Jill, glad to have you on today.
Terrific to be here. And you kind of got this right off. It's no longer radio. We now talk about the world of audio. So good for you right away.
I've heard about more of the channels that are being added in there, so glad that I was able to define that correctly. And Jill, before we dive too deep into different channels, mediums, would you mind giving us a bit of a background on yourself, your story, everything that's brought you to the world of audio?
Okay. Well, I started right out of college at some very large agencies, working on huge projects, doing a very small part. Quickly transitioned into sales, where I went to work for the largest broadcasting rep firm of radio stations. They did about $1 billion a year in sales. And while I was there, the CEO, who is nothing short of genius, developed a strategy and marketing division. And he took about 10 people from both inside and outside of the company. And he sent us all to Harvard, where we completely got out of our comfort zone and learned about strategy and positioning and really just all about differentiating and how to run a company, how to work in the business world through case studies. So we spent weeks at Harvard just doing case studies, came back and worked with companies on how to help them grow their business by adding audio. Worked in that space for a number of years, and then really, absolutely fell in love with the storytelling side of audio and the relationship that people had with their favorite radio stations and how they listened to those stations day after day, week after week, month after month, and how we could do a better job by telling stories effectively on the radio and how to help advertisers grow their businesses effectively. So went out on my own about 15 years ago, started Direct Results, and Direct Results is all about helping advertisers. Sorry, I've got that problem with my window. Direct Results is all about helping advertisers grow at the right pace and at the right price. And, it's everything that we do is all through effective use of audio. And that's really kind of what we do. The company is based in LA. We've got offices all around the country. We work with big clients and small clients. It's been an amazing journey, but what we do consistently is help advertisers grow it on their terms.
And I love how you started with case studies and quite the background, Harvard level case studies. When we speak to marketers, they often want to ask, what results can this campaign produce? What can I anticipate? So you're able to point at case studies and say, hey, here's what we did with another group. This is what they tried. Here were the findings. That aspect of storytelling plays such a large role when it comes to planning. What is the process of putting together a case study? What do you convey in terms of what a founder can expect from an audio campaign?
Well, first of all, we don't run campaigns with advertisers where they haven't identified what they're trying to accomplish. So in the old days, it was sort of like throw it against the wall and see what sticks. And I never liked being that business. When we started Direct Results, so we knew that all the radio stations had some level of unsold inventory. And we knew that people listen every day, even to this day, 97% of all people listen to radio. And when you take a look at audio, just about everybody listens to audio. And they trust those stations to deliver news and information and products that are relevant to them. So we quickly started measuring what the response was with every radio station, every campaign. So, how to put together a case study? The advertiser tells us what they're trying to accomplish. Are they looking for a $100 cost per acquisition? Are they looking for a $10 cost per lead? What are they looking for? About 15 years ago, we started measuring the response of all these campaigns. So we put all this into one big database. So we've got hundreds of millions of dollars of ROI data that helps us to see that certain kinds of audiences respond to certain kinds of messages on particular radio stations. And while two radio stations might look identical, their audiences, in fact, respond to different kinds of messages. So we can see very clearly at what cost they respond to that message. So that's part of it. We also use Nielsen audio data. We use lots and lots of other data that's available through big data companies. So there's a lot of different ways to create a case study. But for the most part, it is, what are you trying to accomplish? What is your timeline? What is your vision? What is the inspiration behind this campaign? And what is your budget? So that's sort of the start.
Of course. And I'm always so amazed to hear about that first-party database that you guys have. These radio stations, these audiences, these industries, these day and times of week that listeners respond to different types of messaging. There's assumptions, but being able to base it off the metrics is quite a contrast, quite a difference. And direct results, direct response marketing, advertising really works off that type of science. What type of info do you get from a brand to understand their goals and how realistic they would be across different audio channels?
So, of course, every advertiser is a little different. So there are certain advertisers like a home advisor or an Angie, where they're looking for a cost per service request. There are other advertisers like a financial services company where they're looking for stages along the way. First stage is, will they come to my website? Second stage is, will they submit their email address? Third stage is, are they going to become a customer? So every stage has a different kind of a metric. That's kind of the beauty of it. It's not really about our story. It's completely customized to their story. And advertisers range from entertainment, so something like going to a sporting event or a concert, to signing up for a new financial advisor, to getting a new bank account, to using a new home food service. I mean, it's really everything under the sun. There's a campaign for each one of them. There are certain kinds of campaigns that don't do particularly well with audio, but for the most part, if there is a level of personal involvement, personal engagement, audio can be a good thing for them.
And do you find that most advertisers that you work with have tested digital these days and are pointing at some of those metrics and looking to get better results from more traditional channels such as radio, that they're looking into more digital audio channels, or are they going to radio as a first rollout? And I ask based on some of the founders that listen into this show.
Yeah, no, absolutely. A lot of the advertisers that we're working with now have been experiencing tremendous growth through digital, and they kind of need to take the next step. So where digital will, there's so much data through digital, and a lot of that digital is lower funnel. A lot of audio is very well targeted, very well tested and proven, but they're bringing a product or a service to an advertiser. So for instance, very simple for instance, I want to take a trip and I'm thinking about going hypothetically to Cancun. As soon as I search for that, then I'll get all kinds of ads that are going to, of course, be all around the Cancun experience. Audio might bring all kinds of new opportunities. So it might be anywhere from maybe it's not just traveling to Cancun. Maybe it's going to give you ideas of other places in the area. So we know from our data, people that travel a lot. We know people that can afford to travel. We know people that have taken trips recently. So radio will deliver a much larger audience. That's why it's called broadcast, right? So radio will deliver a much larger audience that is qualified for the product or the service, but maybe not be right there at the very bottom of the funnel. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really resonates with me. I have a friend, another digital agency that still talks about radio being the top channel. And he'll point at some different types of remnant inventory, as you were mentioning, ad placements that have not been sold yet, and the price points there, and then across higher volumes of channels. But at the same time, there's something about being in your car, hearing in between stations, and having an ad that speaks directly to you. Like you mentioned, travel, I fit in that category. If it was something that was very relevant for me, I'd be more and more likely to respond. So I definitely know how powerful audio is. What are the typical lengths? What are the typical dynamics? What features make an audio advertisement so powerful, so responsive for a brand and listener?
Okay, so first I want to go back to that how to develop qualified leads real quick. So
Yeah, please.
look at different kinds of people's lifestyles. So for instance, let's say you're reaching a professional woman or a professional mother. They don't have as much time to seek out different opportunities. So you tell them on an audio channel something, or maybe tell them with radio that there's a sale at Macy's or at Neiman Marcus or whatever, they're going to respond. They don't have the ability to get that information from or the time to get that information from other media. So it's really not about using audio as opposed to digital or newspaper or print. It's really about how to reach these people through a form of media that they're using, how to diversify, right? But for the most part, a lot of our advertisers are those that are digital advertisers that are looking to grow and to be more effective with their data. So when we take a look at like education or health and wellness, so many of those campaigns do better when you've got both an audio campaign and a digital campaign working in tandem. It's remarkable how both campaigns work better. Let's see. So you asked me about length. Well, when it comes to audio, for the most part, we use 30-second and 60-second spots. For the most part, everything that we do is really all about the title of your podcast, test, optimize and scale. Typically, we like to start out small. So when we're talking about, like, we've got campaigns that are on the air now that are very large, many multi-millions that started with a few $10 or $20 or $30,000. We have an educational product that started out with a $10,000 budget and ended up with, at a $14 million budget because of the fact that everything is 100% measurable. And with audio, in terms of a direct response campaign, you just keep on running as long as it's performing. So every one of our clients sees a report every single week that shows exactly what the return is on their ad spend at each individual program. So we're not looking at, hypothetically, if we have a $100,000 budget, we're not looking solely at a great response on a $100,000 campaign. We're looking at every single individual program, every personality that's endorsing the product, every station that's got a remnant campaign on, every podcast. We're looking at everything individually, because typically what happens is some of them will overperform, some of them will come out right as they should be, and others will underperform. So the whole idea of testing, optimizing, and scaling is just that. We purge the stations that aren't working well, and we continue to add to stations and performances and programs that are working well. So typically, if you're asking where we start, we might start with 3 or 4 markets. We might want to start with 3 or 4 podcasts. We might want to start with 2 or 3 digital audio streaming campaigns. It's kind of where we start.
And then let the data tell you what's performing best and do more of those key drivers.
The data tells us everything. The data gives us, we kind of joke, it's like following the crumbs, Hansel and Gretel following the crumbs to the house. It's, with the data, we can see absolutely everything, and we can always perform. 96% of our campaigns meet or exceed the advertiser's expectation because we stare at that data every single day and we optimize constantly.
Astounding performance metrics. I don't see those numbers as strong in digital as often. And like you mentioned, it's not a matter of the comparison as much as the user journey. Who is the customer that you're targeting? Where can you reach them from an organic standpoint, from an advertising standpoint? I love how you're mentioning, podcasts and different types of mediums that users are listening into, that it may feel less like an ad and more just part of the organic discussion. I'm actually a fan of ads that users can't identify as ads. It just feels like part of the programming to them. But being able to reach that user multiple times to effectively get them to that point of conversion is the full game, not so much comparing one channel to the next. So was so glad to see you point that out, the aspects of the customer journey.
Absolutely. Right now we're running a number of campaigns for Father's Day. So the opportunity to have a personality rep, whether they're on a podcast or on a radio station, talk about receiving that gift and what it feels like and what it tastes like or what it looks like or how they can share that customer experience is exactly the experience that that you and I might share if you're asking me for my favorite restaurant. And when I tell you that favorite restaurant, that's so much better than you looking, at an influencer that you don't know or at an ad or at Yelp. You know what I mean? It speaks to you because you've got a connection there, without a doubt.
You feel like you know them. It's like you said with the recommendations of the restaurants, and the more time I hear about that restaurant from the more people, from the more sources, the more I believe it, the more I feel I need to go and test it out for myself.
Yeah.
So that repetition is everything.
But sometimes if a really good friend of yours that you spend a lot of time with, maybe every day, every week, tells you once when you're in the market, you're going to respond. So some of the beauty behind a well-placed audio ad is just that. It's like if you're in the marketplace and somebody that you trust, that you believe, tells you that this is the solution for you, you're like, hot diggity, there's my answer. I don't need to search any farther. And that's the beauty of the influence and the storytelling that comes behind the connectivity that people have with their favorite, on-air personality. So that personality might be on a podcast, right? Or that personality might be on a radio station. But it can make an impact really quickly.
Absolutely. I have friends, and I myself have converted from advertisements in the past from Joe Rogan's podcast, list of other podcasts that fit that same scenario you're talking to.
Yeah.
I hear about it once. I'm pulling it out. I'm pulling out my mobile device, typing everything in, putting the little code, and before I lose track of it, I convert. That way it's off my desk.
Right. So, and then the other thing is, when you listen to like a Joe Rogan and he tells you about something that you like, it's really remarkable how the other ads that he's running are things that you already use, right? Because you connect with the way he lives his lifestyle or the way that he uses products. So it's really kind of a fun thing. I know I have friends that say in the course of a year, they basically purchase every single thing that their favorite podcast person tells them to buy, which is crazy. But it's very influential, without a doubt. And, in our business, when we're choosing podcasts or personalities, it's such a meticulous search for matching the right product with the right personality. Because when that's done, there's just nothing stronger because it's so, to your point, it's so, it's organic. It sounds right. It feels right. We have personalities that are incredibly capable about talking about, steaks, and yet they're completely incapable about talking about trips to Cancun. So it's really about that meticulous matching and how good they are at telling that story when we find the right personalities.
Absolutely. You'd think steaks and Cancun go hand in hand, but I guess it's not for each audience. I want to speak further about audio. So we've talked about podcasts. Obviously, you see the power of podcasts from my own podcast, from podcast connections we've made for our clients. What other type of audio placements are there beyond radio and podcasts?
Well, of course, there's digital audio, which is the Pandoras and the Spotifys and the likes of those, which are incredibly effective. A little different. Typically, they're 15 or 30-second units, but we're able to, a couple things. One, a lot of people are using streaming on a very consistent basis. So they're using it when they're out, running errands, when they're out jogging, when they're cooking dinner. So it's really neat to see how you can align with the time and the placement there. In almost all cases, they're listening on a one-on-one, so that's really important. We can layer all kinds of third-party data in there, which allows us to measure the customer before we even start, and then, of course, measure the customer journey. Everything that we do now, just about everything is pixel tracked. So from the very beginning, depending on the media, the consumer listens to the podcast perhaps on their mobile device, they go to their computer and they go to the website. We can follow them all along that journey. And that's incredibly valuable when it comes to optimizing. Very, very effective at scaling a campaign.
And you said currently on third-party data, and I know pixels are a big discussion point right now in the world of advertising. Is that affecting any of these digital audio placements on the Pandora, Spotify type apps, or anywhere you're buying audio advertising inventory?
I'm not worried about the pixels because the pixels is a computer learning. So it's what I'm worried about is the third-party data. So of course we're seeing so much with Apple and iOS and what's going on there. That third-party data will be no doubt going away. But that's kind of the beauty behind all the first-party data that we get to hold on to, because that data is incredibly direct and it's very clear and it's very repeatable. So it allows us to deliver clear, measurable, and most importantly, repeatable results. So that's a really key thing. But the pixel tracking, I'm not worried about. So far, that's all good. I haven't heard about problems there, and we've checked very carefully with the vendors that we use in terms of pixel tracking, and that is all good to go for quite some time because it's not, there's no retargeting, there's no using people's information to invade their lives in any way, I guess. So we're all good there. Have you heard otherwise?
Not for those apps specifically. I know for Facebook, it's watering down the results a little bit in terms of what we can track in regards to conversion all the way through. But we're looking at longer funnels. So more of a lead generation campaign and then a whole funnel that follows from lead generation to conversion. That way we can match data, producing that first party audience data for each campaign and then measuring it to the conversions to get deeper analytics, deeper findings on what's coming from where.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But and on third party, we're getting some limitations as well too. That's why I was really interested when you said it. Wanted to see how you guys are getting around it, and love the application of the first party data. I imagine you guys are generating so much data, on a month to month basis as well, and just fascinated to see how each different verticals responding to the iOS 14.5 updates. But it's great to hear you guys have it set up to where it's not affecting you, and there's new avenues you're looking towards.
Absolutely. For the most part, most of the audio campaigns that we do, we almost always include streaming now because a good amount of people are listening. Look at what happened in this last year. Everyone who didn't stream is now streaming. So, for the most part, maybe 10 or 15% of our budgets overall are going to streaming.
Very nice. And do these play different roles in the funnel? Or do you see commonalities for which channels produce the strongest from broadcast radio to podcast to digital audio to streaming?
So there's no difference between, when we're doing personality campaigns, it's just about finding the right personalities. So it doesn't matter if they're on podcast or if they're on radio. It doesn't matter. It really just matters who's able to deliver the return on ad spend. And that's kind of the beauty of it. It's also tremendously helpful for us as we not only test, optimize, and scale, but also as we negotiate these campaigns, because there's no outlet that you need anymore. Now it's really just a matter of who's going to best connect the buyer and the seller. In terms of streaming audio, absolutely. There's a lot of people that are not spending as much time with audio, with radio or podcasts, and therefore the streaming audio is a really good supplement. but it's not an instead of. It's a addition. Like I said, they might be using um, streaming while they're running, or while they're exercising, or while they're out running errands, or while they're cooking. So it's just another way to spend time with the consumer, quite frankly. The only place that we really see an either or is when we're looking at like a Sirius XM, which is quite frankly a very small percentage of the audience, but a lot of people that listen to Sirius XM do so in their car instead of listening to the radio. So that's the only either or. Otherwise, it's really just an addition.
And differences in audience quality or responsiveness from Sirius to broadcast, or I imagine it really varies up market to market.
Yeah, I mean, SiriusXM. So SiriusXM is only national. Podcast right now is really only national from the most effective basis. People will sell you podcasts on a regional basis, but it's really much more effective on a national basis. Radio, of course, you can buy network radio or you can buy local spot radio. So a lot of it is really based on what your client's trying to accomplish. If your client has retail locations, then of course local spot radio makes sense. If your client is only national or only, available via web, then for the most part, podcast or national outcome is better. But it really depends on what they're trying to accomplish. Very often, we will test in local spot radio. We'll test to get messaging good, clear and clean, and then we'll scale with national for the most part. Not always. We also will do a lot of testing with small podcasts. There's podcasts that have, there's over 30 million podcasts now. So there are podcasts that have, it's crazy. The Joe Rogans of the world, most advertisers can't afford those and certainly shouldn't start there. They want to get the messaging clear, although Joe Rogan is phenomenal at endorsements. But for the most part, you start small. You might start with podcasts that have 10,000 to 50,000 people listening and get the messaging really clean and the customer journey right on target, and then scale from there. It happens very often where larger advertisers will go into podcasts and they'll buy the biggest shows, and it will not get them the return that they need. So we like to start small. Maybe grow.
Sure.
Maybe 20% growth a week, something like that. That's it. Next.
20% growth a week. And let's talk about that. So, given the name of the show, Test Optimize Scale, where should, let's say, a, early advertiser, they're seeing performance on digital channels, they want to take it to radio, they want to take it to audio. Where is the best place for them to start? What are the best things for them to test out in terms of timeline and making sure there's enough touch points to see conversion, not just one Joe Rogan placement, but months of, time in the market? What's the best percentage breakdowns? How should they perceive all this in terms of building a good audio strategy?
So how should they go from digital to adding audio to their campaign?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So like always, it depends on the advertiser, but for the most part, we really want to see about a 4 to 6 week test. That'll give us an opportunity of the cadence of the campaign, of where we're going to see opportunity and growth. I hate to say podcast versus radio versus streaming because it's so individualized based on the campaign. We have a campaign that's a food service delivery, home food service delivery, and they were doing very well with digital, but they just got to a point where their leads were becoming very expensive. They couldn't grow at the pace that they wanted to, so they added audio. We started with 2 markets. As we could see the right kind of response with those 2 markets, then we expanded from there. It depends. But for the most part, I would say if you're looking at a local campaign, you might want to look at something like about a $40,000 test, which I know is sometimes big and scary for sometimes, people that are going directly from digital. But it is amazing. It is such a natural next progression because we've got all the data on who these people are, how they live, how much money they make, where, what their lifestyle is, what kinds of ads they respond to. So it's just a natural next step. We can track them through every single dollar that we spend, which is phenomenal in terms of how to build a campaign. So when you're talking about, testing, optimizing, and scaling, when you get to a point with your digital campaign where you're starting to feel a little bit of a handcuff, it's a great way to fill that funnel with qualified new leads and be able to track that customer's journey to scale your business effectively. So that would be some guidelines. 4 to 6 weeks, maybe $40,000 for starters. Um, we have a number of, I can tell you one campaign after another that started at $30,000 and, like I mentioned, ended up at 14 million. Not because they came up with more money, but because we were able to help them grow their business at the right price per new customer and at the right pace for their business. That's what it's all about.
Right customer, right place of it. And with those success rates and your first party database, that definitely sounds like a great area to begin to test out. We don't see every campaign work right out of the gate. I see 4 to 6 weeks. I imagine there's some corrections in there in terms of optimizations. How does a marketing department go about optimizing if they're not hitting the results on radio or any one of these audio channels if it's not happening upon launch?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, every single campaign has its own tracking device. So some campaigns have their own URL, some of them have their own pixels, some of them have their own, but every single campaign has their own tracking device. If the campaign isn't, so the campaign's not going well, it's, step one, a conversation. The stations, the choosing of the stations and the programs and the personalities is so meticulous that we know that they can work well. So if it's an endorsement, it might be the way that they're telling the story. It might be something as simple as, like for instance, I'll give you, for instance, an Omaha Steaks. So Omaha Steaks is a huge brand. They've been around forever. They have such a quality product. Everybody that tries it loves it. But if you talk about just the convenience of Omaha Steaks, maybe it's not going to be a good sell. Maybe you need to talk about the experience of you came home one day and you were exhausted and had just been through the ringer, and then you threw a steak on the grill and how great the day turned around and how beautiful that story was. So it can be the story, it can be the price, it can be the placement of the ads. So, week 1 or week 2, it's just a matter of getting those things down. If we don't see some improvement by week 3, they're out. It's really a matter of typically 30% of the stations or the personalities or the programs will overperform. 30% will come in right about at the metrics, and typically about 30% of them underperform. So we'll give them all of the tools to improve. If it's a remnant schedule, maybe it's just a matter of running more spots. If it's an endorsement, it might be the story. But ultimately, what we do is we track the data. So if we've got stations that are working beautifully, we look for we find more lookalikes like those stations. And we just continue to scale in that way. 100% of the stations are not going to work. The reality is, if you stare at the data and you work with the data, you almost can't go wrong. If you don't work with the data, that's where you go wrong. Or even if you look at a campaign in its totality, if you look at, my $100,000 overall came in at the right cost per lead, so to speak, you can kind of get hurt there, because then you can get stuck with just that $100,000 number. What you want to do is purge the stations that aren't achieving, and continue to grow with the stations, the programs, the formats that are. And then there's so much else to look at. You have to be careful not to move too fast. If a station or a personality or program has all the right makings of success, then maybe you keep them on for a while and you work with them for a while. For the most part, these personalities we've been working with for years, it's like you don't always make your decisions off of the last thing that happened. It's really looking at the overall experience and how we know, like for the most part, I always say we buy people as opposed to prices or programming. When you work with people that you trust, when you work with people that are on your same team, you're going to find a way. And it's remarkable how that happens time after time. Um, it's really about the people and about the relationships. It's really about trusting your partners and finding a way to make it work from that perspective. If you don't trust those partners, then you've got to approach decisions early on. If you do trust them, you find a way. Kind of the way it works.
This is so intricate and fascinating. Trust the data. Know the data, what's coming from each channel. Put together a whole list of the channels that you want to use, the spots for different broadcasters in each market, and know the exact numbers. 30% are going to work, 30% are not. Percentage in between, of course, but be optimizing towards what's really driving, and by the people. So find the people that you trust, continue doing work with them, and creating a collaborative of teamwork towards those results together. But by following that process and really letting the numbers, the data tell you where to go from there, you can optimize things to a point of effectiveness.
Very good summary.
Just trying to emphasize it. We do portions of that in digital, and to hear about how it occurs for, just as example, radio and some of the offline discussions that occur, getting the numbers from each different station and measuring them comparatively, and then being able to move it forward. I mean, I have to tell you, even in digital, some of the groups we know miss a lot of those steps when it comes to Facebook advertising and some of these other self-serve channels. So to hear about the level of detail that's involved for audio and measuring radio, measuring the digital channels, measuring all these different pieces, really amazing. And I always admire direct response advertisers as a whole. I started my career more on the creative side with some groups in branding, different types of consumer packaged goods and apparel fashion brands. And to me, it's so much more impressive to be able to speak to a marketing department, speak to a founder and say, hey, we're going to produce X amount of conversions for you. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's what we're going to do in terms of optimization strategy and improve results on an ongoing basis. The way the numbers connect to me is just powerful. So to hear about these inner workings, very insightful.
Yeah, I think, Jason, it's equally as important to know that you only take advertisers that you know you can do good work for. So it's never about, wow, we get another client. It's really, we've been doing this for so long that we know whose business we can help and we know whose business we can't. We get calls, as everybody does on a regular basis, that says, I have so much money for you if you can just make it work. And then you talk to them about what they can make work, and you're like, I can't do that for you. So, the beauty of audio is, I guess, a few things. One, the storytelling is just such a powerful way to get across how to sell a product and why to sell a product and why to buy a product. The demographics and the psychographics, all that information is available through audio. So it's all right there. So when you take a look at the power of storytelling and the ability to target and the effectiveness of negotiation, and to your point, sometimes it's unsold inventory, sometimes it's traditional inventory. It really just, it's you look at all these pieces. That's why it's easy to be successful. But the meticulous detail, it's crazy. And people will say, I don't know why I would want to use an agency. And I'm like, why would you want to try to mull your way through 30 million podcasts? Like, I can't even do that. We have a full staff, you know what I mean? And all kinds of tools. So, everybody is good at certain things. And, you just want to find people that have this incredible passion for how to make this work. And if you do, and if you're inspired by them, and if you believe them, and you create a trust, it's a really powerful media. It really is. Medium. It's just incredible.
Absolutely. And here, learning it more and more on this discussion, and you're making it sound very approachable for marketers of all sizes to tap into. But I know you have a in-depth portfolio of Fortune 500 type organizations, big brands. How do you take results, the 4 to 6 weeks are working, and really ramp them up, really operate at scale? What does that look like, taking results at one level and multiplying it multiple times on these large national campaigns?
Well, on the large national campaigns, so for instance, we've worked with like a home advisor and Angie for many, many years. So we started that campaign with a very small test. In fact, I remember we had a test that was ready to go, and right before they launched it, they chickened out. And then the following year, they went ahead and did it. With them, they were doing a lot of digital, but they didn't have. It's just access to people, right? And it's access to connectivity, and it's access to relationships. So with that campaign, it started out small. We had a very clear metric that we had to meet, and I think the budgets were set by on a quarterly basis, and then they continued to grow as we were able to meet the cost per service provider per se. So I think we started out with a small network buy, and that network buy just grew. Most of these advertisers are using multiple media. They use digital, television, radio, podcast, all kinds of media. If it's a local advertiser, we might start out with 1 or 2 or 3 radio stations, maybe 2 markets. And as we're able to get that message, clean and clearly delivered and get those leads in the pipeline and those leads closed, we just continue to copy that behavior. I mean, it's just it's a copycat behavior. As I said, we're very agnostic when it comes to using a particular broadcaster. It's really about developing a strategy and a campaign that's going to work exceptionally well in that market, in that part of the country. It's really about customizing campaigns that are specific to the needs of the advertiser, tracking the data, and repeating the behavior. Might not sound very exciting or romantic, but that's what it is. And it's really, it may not sound romantic, but it's exceptionally fun it's just so crazy fun. When we look at the data every day and we see that it's delivering, it's just a high fives all around. It's just a fun way to be in business. I can't imagine that people in the old days that just did a branding strategy had as much fun as we have when we're doing a direct response campaign. I mean, you certainly experience this all the time, Jason. When it works, you're just like hot diggity, and it's just it's the results of labor, intelligence, hard work, and and ethics and teamwork. It's all rolled up into one. It's all the things that you hope should happen, and they do happen when they're implemented correctly. When you have the the right team in the right seats, and when you have the right core values and you have the right relationships with broadcasters, it comes together.
Absolutely. And the romantic part for me is the results themselves at scale. Like you said, the fun part, the exciting part. We work on so many campaigns that hit obstacles or perform to average levels when things are really, really coming together, and those outstanding levels of results, when those cost per acquisitions are coming in at a point that was much stronger than desired. That is pure enjoyment. And the romantic part again is how it grows from there, what the discussion looks like from there. And you're making it sound very systematic of, hey, we see the results. We then look for more stations, more of the people that are making this happen, and taking it to new levels on an ongoing basis.
Absolutely. But then again, when it doesn't work, you pivot. You know what I mean? When it doesn't work, when you don't see the results coming in, you need to stop, change direction, take a hard look at what, is it the messaging? It really is a combination of messaging and price. So it's, you have to just keep your eyes wide open all the time. And that's what the data allows us to do.
Mm-hmm. Keep your eyes open all the time, track the data. Jill, as we begin to wrap up here, are there any closing thoughts, any closing recommendations that you'd like to leave the audience with?
I would just say that, we're so lucky to be in this age where we get to help build companies and that we get to measure the response and scale. It's just it wasn't that long ago that wasn't an opportunity. And the combination of digital and audio together it's like a marriage made in heaven. Um, Very similar data, similar abilities, but a different access to the consumer and a different story being told or an ad being placed. So as you look to scale, know that you can have great confidence by effectively scaling through the use of smart audio. Um, I guess that's maybe a good place to start. It's just if you love good stories, you want to be in the audio space, and if you trust people that you listen to on the radio or you love listening to podcasts, you want to tap into that relationship. That's a really, really powerful relationship, and it's a great way to grow your business.
Couldn't agree with you more. And taking down notes as we're discussing here. Going to go over it with my team and have them listen in this episode. I love how we talked about focusing on the actual people, the users, where they are, where they're at in their customer journey, and a full algorithmic approach on how to address audio. So I thank you so much for sharing this with us and join us on the episode today. If any listeners want to get in touch with you, keep this discussion going, what is your preferred method of communication? What's the best way to get hold of you?
I want to talk with you. I want to meet you because it's been so long since we've met anybody in person, right, Jason? We were just saying,
right.
Just to see anybody in person, can we just do that? Even if you don't want to do business with us, let's meet for coffee. Kidding. Best way to reach me is Jill at Direct Results. We do have offices in LA and in New York, and we have some people around the country as well. Love to talk with you. Just shoot me an email or probably the best way, Jill at directresults.com. That is results with an S. And then we'll figure out a way to connect. So thank you very much, and I hope to get to continue this conversation. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Jason. Continued success with your business and your clients, and how lucky they are to get to work with you. We're lucky. We're in a good business, huh?
Awesome. Absolutely, Jill. And appreciate that feedback. And for everyone listening in, Jill's being modest. She's one of the top names in audio. I would take her up on that opportunity to meet in person at that. And we appreciate you listening in today. Look forward to the next episode as well. Have a good rest of the day, everyone. We'll see you next time.